We're divorced, Claire. I blocked the doorway, determined not to let my millionaire ex-wife set foot in my $950 a month apartment. The divorce agreement was clear, I said. I walked away with nothing. I didn't even take the $1,000,000 you offered me. That's why I'm here. To pay my tab. Claire dangled a black credit card between her fingers, her voice as cold as ice. What? I'm bankrupt. I owe $10 million. You're kidding me. I'm not. Her eyes welled up, the first time I had ever seen her look weak. So, I need to stay here, to hide from creditors. The next second, she shoved the card into my hand. There's $100,000 on that. To rent you for a year. The pin is your birthday. I gripped the thin piece of plastic, but it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, so hot it seared my fingertips. Claire, are you insane? I tried to push her and the card back out the door, but she was like an eel, slipping past me into the tiny entryway. With a sharp click, she locked the door behind her. That sound felt like a judge's gavel coming down. What the hell do you think you're doing? I finally lost my temper. She ignored me, her eyes sweeping over my cramped, less than 500 square foot studio, taking in the faint yellowing of the cheap paint on the walls. Her expression was a mix of things I couldn't quite decipher. Disgust, curiosity, and something else I couldn't name. Ethan, just take pity on me, she finally said, her voice laced with a hoarseness she couldn't hide. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Pity on you? What about all those guys swarming you when we split up? All those investors and CEOs? What about your shares in the company? Sell a fraction of those, and you could start over 10 times. Why come to me, a programmer making 75 grand a year? I deliberately brought up the very thing that had torn us apart. That whole glittering world of hers where I never belonged. The color drained from her face. She pressed her lips into a thin line, as if fighting back a wave of pain. But just as quickly, her mask of icy superiority snapped back into place. They just laugh at me. She turned away and walked toward the living area, setting her expensive-looking suitcase on the floor. She started unpacking as if she'd just checked into a suite at the Four Seasons. She claimed my only armchair as her bed, tossing my favorite throw pillow onto the floor with a look of disdain. That was it. I snatched her suitcase. Take your stuff and get out. No. She lunged for it, clinging to the handle like it was the last shred of her dignity. Ethan, let go. You're the one who needs to let go. We're done, remember? We wrestled in the tiny space. Her nails raked across my arm, leaving a stinging red line. In the chaos, she stumbled backward, her back hitting the wall with a dull thud. She gasped, sucking in a sharp breath. Her eyes instantly turned red again, but she bit her lip, refusing to cry. My heart clenched. Everything in me froze. It had been a year since the divorce. I thought I was over her. I let go of the suitcase and stormed into my bedroom, slamming the door behind me. Bang! The door was a wall between us. I leaned against it, listening to the faint sounds from the other room, and raked my hands through my hair in frustration. You get the chair, that's it. Take it or leave it. I yelled through the door. Silence. Then, her voice, thick with emotion. Thank you. I didn't sleep a wink that night. The bedroom door became a demilitarized zone, a line neither of us would cross. And she, the woman I thought I'd never see again, had just invaded my life. The next morning, I woke up to a strange smell. It wasn't the usual scent of coffee from the diner downstairs, but the sweet, rich aroma of butter. Annoyed, I walked out of the bedroom and saw Claire had taken over my kitchenette. She was wearing one of my old button-down shirts, a plain flannel I wore for coding marathons, but on her, it looked like high fashion. The hem barely covered her thighs, and her long, pale legs were right there, impossible to ignore. I swallowed hard and quickly looked away, feeling a flush of heat creep up my neck. Who said you could touch my stuff? My voice came out cold and hard. She acted like she hadn't heard me. She carried over a plate with a picture-perfect breakfast. Eggs, bacon, and toast. I made breakfast, she said, placing it carefully on my small dining table, even setting out a fork and knife. My breakfast is a frozen burrito nuked for 90 seconds. I don't eat that crap. I walked straight to the freezer, grabbed my usual, and tossed it in the microwave, pointedly ignoring her pathetic attempt at a peace offering. The small light in her eyes flickered and died. She didn't say another word. She just sat down and quietly ate the entire two-person breakfast by herself. After she finished, I went to the closet, pulled out a roll of black electrical tape, and right in front of her, laid down a perfectly straight line across the floor from the front door to the sliding glass door of the balcony. The left side of this line is my territory. The right side is yours. I pointed to the armchair where she'd slept, and my bedroom and my office corner are completely off limits. Don't even think about it. She stared at the ugly black line on the floor, her face turning pale, then red, then pale again. Finally, she just nodded without a word. I thought that would be the end of it, that I could have my peace. I was wrong. Claire's presence was overwhelming. After she showered, the tiny bathroom would be filled with the scent of some ridiculously expensive body wash I couldn't name. The smell would linger for hours, getting on my nerves. She'd walk out wrapped in a towel, her hair dripping, casually moving around her tiny patch of territory. One night, probably trying to prove she wasn't completely useless, she attempted to hand wash some of her clothes in the sink. The result was half a bottle of my new laundry detergent poured in at once, turning the entire balcony into a mountain of suds. Claire, do you have any idea how to live in the real world? I finally exploded. She jumped, startled, still holding a foam-covered shirt, looking completely lost. I've always just used a washing machine, she mumbled. Well, there's no washing machine here. A few days later, probably trying to make up for the laundry incident, she made her first attempt at cooking a real dinner. I came home from work that evening to find her waiting, almost like a wife waiting for her husband to come home. She nervously carried a plate out of the kitchen. On it was a blackened, lumpy mess. Ethan, I made roast chicken. I glanced at the charred object on the plate. I didn't even want to get close to it. Without a word, I walked straight to her and took the plate from her hands. As she watched in stunned silence, I went to the trash can, tilted the plate, and scraped the entire thing into the bin. The plate clattered against the plastic, an empty, hollow sound. Don't touch my kitchen again, I said, my voice flat and cold, and turned back to my room. I thought I heard a tiny choked sob behind me, but I didn't turn back. I had to show her, had to make it clear that between us there was nothing but a $100,000 transaction. I kept pushing her away, rejecting her every move, all to protect my own pathetic pride and a boundary that had already been shattered. That weekend, I deliberately invited a few friends over for a game night, and I made sure to invite Megan. Megan was a friend from college, a fun, easygoing girl who also happened to be the person Claire had always hated the most. I didn't tell Claire anyone was coming. When the doorbell rang, she was curled up on the armchair in a simple sweatsuit, reading a book. I opened the door, and my friends piled in, laughing and joking. Megan spotted Claire immediately. The smile on her face faltered for a second before she put on a look of exaggerated surprise. "Ethan, who's this?" "Your new roommate." She said it just loud enough for everyone to hear. I mumbled something noncommittal. "A friend. Just crashing here for a few days." Claire's back went ramrod straight. She looked up, her gaze sweeping coldly over me and Megan, before she lowered her head back to her book as if we were all invisible. The mood in the room turned awkward. Megan, however, acted like she didn't notice. She sat down right next to me on the floor, her voice overly familiar. "Ethan, you must be thirsty after all that. Wanted to get you a beer." She started to get up. "No, it's fine, I can get it," I said, but I didn't stop her. In Claire's eyes, that was the same as saying yes. I could feel her stare burning a hole in my back. Megan came back with the beer, and when she handed it to me, her fingers brushed against mine for just a second too long. Just then, Claire stood up. She grabbed her jacket from the back of the armchair and walked toward the door without a word. An instinct I didn't understand made me want to call out to her. But Megan grabbed my arm, leaning in close to whisper in my ear, "Just let her go. She's just a crazy ex who won't leave you alone. Are you really going to let her ruin our night? Come on, it's your turn." I hesitated. She was right. What was Claire to me now? A creditor I was stuck with? I turned back to the screen and forced myself to focus on the game, pretending nothing had happened. After my friends left, the apartment was quiet, filled with empty chip bags and beer bottles. Claire still hadn't come back. I stared out the window as the sky grew darker, a knot of irritation tightening in my stomach. Where could she have gone? In this city, did she have anywhere else to go? It was almost midnight when I finally heard a key scraping in the lock. Claire was back, and she reeked of alcohol. She stumbled into the middle of the room and stopped right at the black tape line I'd put on the floor. She stared at me, her eyes red and furious. "You're still the same, Ethan. You haven't changed at all," she yelled, her voice breaking with tears. The little bit of worry I'd felt instantly evaporated, replaced by anger. "What am I? I had friends over. Is that a crime? What right do you have to judge me? How many men did you have orbiting you? One day it was a business partner. The next it was an old family friend. I have one friend over, Megan, and you act like this? Who the hell do you think you are?" All the frustration from the evening and all the resentment from our past came pouring out of me. "That was for work. Does work require you to hang on their arm at cocktail parties? Does work require them to drive you home in the middle of the night? Claire, don't treat me like an idiot. Ethan, you're an asshole." After that shout, the dam broke and she started sobbing. She didn't argue anymore. She just stumbled back to her armchair, curled into a ball, and cried, a muffled, heartbreaking sound that was an indictment of my cruelty and the impassable gulf between us. It was the first time since the divorce that I had seen her cry like that, and my heart ached with every sob. After the fight, we fell into a deep and total Cold War. For days, we didn't speak a single word to each other. The atmosphere in that tiny apartment was so thick you could barely breathe. I expected her to resort to her old tactics, storming out or giving me the silent treatment. But she didn't. She had changed. I started to notice she wasn't dressing up in designer clothes and staying out all night anymore. She started coming home at 6 o'clock on the dot. She swapped her expensive power suits for simple t-shirts and jeans, making her look more like a recent college grad than a CEO. Every night, a simple dinner for two would appear on the table. She never tried to offer it to me. She would just make it, eat her portion, and then cover the other plate and leave it there. My mouth said I'd never touch it, but my body was a traitor. One night, I was working late, debugging code until I was starving. Like a ghost, I found myself drawn to the kitchen, staring at the plate of food sitting on the table. After a long hesitation, I put it in the microwave. It wasn't great, a little too salty, actually, but as I ate it, a warmth spread through my stomach that had nothing to do with the food. The Cold War continued in silence. But I started watching her. I noticed she wasn't reading the Wall Street Journal or Vogue anymore. Now, she spent her days curled up on the armchair with her laptop, endlessly scrolling through LinkedIn and Indeed, a permanent frown etched on her forehead. One afternoon, I got caught in a downpour without an umbrella and came home soaked to the bone. As I reached for the doorknob, I saw a plastic bag hanging from it. Inside was a clean, dry towel and an umbrella. From inside, I heard nothing. She didn't seem to know I was home. Another time, I caught a nasty cold and was up half the night coughing. The next morning, when I came out of my bedroom, I saw a box of cold medicine and a glass of warm water sitting next to my coffee mug on the counter. Something inside me shifted like a gentle nudge against a wall I'd spent a year building. The wall began to crack. I still didn't treat her any better, my words still sharp. "Don't waste your time. I'm not falling for it." But that night, for the first time, I didn't wait until the middle of the night to sneak the food she'd made. I walked out of my room, went straight to the table, and sat down. She was staring down at her plate, picking at her food. She looked up when she heard the chair scrape, her eyes wide with surprise. Under her disbelieving gaze, I picked up a fork, took a bite of the chicken, and chewed thoughtfully. "Too much salt," I said, my face a blank mask. Her eyes lit up. It was the brightest I had seen them look in a long, long time. My resolve was softening. I was even getting used to her being here. The realization terrified me. I was getting used to Claire, used to coming home to a warm meal, used to the unfamiliar scent in the bathroom, used to the small shape curled up in the armchair. I even started to worry when she came home late. One evening, she told me she had a team dinner for a new project and would be back late. Not my problem. I grunted, but my eyes kept drifting to the clock on the wall. 9, 10, 11. She wasn't back. Anxiety grew in my chest like a weed. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my jacket and went downstairs, planning to wait for her at the corner. As I stepped out of the building, I saw a black Mercedes S-Class parked down the street. I recognized that car. I'd seen it in a business magazine belonging to some tech mogul. The passenger door opened, and Claire got out. She was wearing a tasteful dress, her makeup subtle. She looked like the powerful, polished executive I remembered. The driver, a man in his 40s with a pot belly and a greasy smile, got out too. It was Mr. Russo. He walked around the car and casually took her by the wrist. Claire, you had a lot to drink. Why don't I help you upstairs? Claire tried to pull her arm away, but he held on. His smile was oily as his thumb traced a slow circle on the back of her hand. It's okay, Mr. Russo, I can manage. She was wearing that fake professional smile I hated so much, her posture almost deferential. It was a kind of humility I had never seen on her before. All right then, get some rest. We'll talk more about the project tomorrow, he said, finally letting go with a final, patronizing pat on her shoulder. In that instant, all the blood rushed to my head. So the bankruptcy was a lie. The hiding from creditors was just an act. She was still the same Claire, effortlessly navigating a world of powerful men. I stood in the shadows of the doorway, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I watched her walk into the building, and any warmth that had started to grow in my heart was instantly extinguished by a bucket of ice water. I got back to the apartment before she did and waited for her in the dark. When she opened the door and saw my silhouette, she jumped. Ethan, you're still awake. I flicked on the light, letting out a cold, humorless laugh. Under the harsh glare, the exhaustion on her face was plain to see. So, Ms. Sterling, is the show over? My voice was quiet, but dripping with sarcasm. Was the service for Mr. Mercedes downstairs satisfactory? Did he offer you a better deal? Or was my $100,000 not enough for you anymore? The blood drained from her face. Ethan, what are you talking about? That's my new boss. Boss? I stood up, closing the distance between us. Does a boss need to get handsy with you? Does he need you to bow and scrape to him? Claire, do you really think I'm that stupid? I pulled the black card from my pocket and threw it at her feet. Take your money and get out. I'm not running a brothel here. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. But the rage and the feeling of being played for a fool were too strong. Claire flinched as if my words had physically struck her. She stared at the floor, her shoulders trembling slightly. I couldn't see her expression. After a long moment, she finally looked up. There were no tears in her eyes, just a dead, gray emptiness. Ethan, in your heart, is that really the kind of person you think I am? Yes, I answered without hesitation. In that single moment, the fragile trust we had just started to build shattered into a million pieces. I initiated a cold war, far more absolute than before. I treated her like she was invisible, looking through her, speaking over her. The food she made, I wouldn't touch. The laundry she did, I threw back on her side of the room. I even reinforced the black line on the floor with a wider, thicker strip of tape. To punish her, or maybe just to prove to myself that I could move on, I called Megan. Hey, that friend you wanted to set me up with? Let's do it. Megan's voice on the other end was thrilled. Claire was sitting on the armchair just a few feet away. She heard every word. She tried to talk to me later. Ethan, that night wasn't what you think. Mr. Russo, I'm not interested in your business. I cut her off, grabbing my jacket to leave. As I walked past her, I could feel her tense up. The next day, I deliberately chose the nicest shirt I owned, shaved, and even styled my hair. Before I left, I walked into the main room and spoke to the silent figure on the armchair. I have a dinner date tonight. Don't wait up. I saw her head snap up, her eyes wide with a pain and shock she couldn't hide. A flicker of satisfaction went through me, but it was quickly followed by a profound emptiness. I met my date at a quiet coffee shop. She was nice, soft-spoken, with a gentle smile. She was exactly the kind of person I used to think was my type. The conversation was fine. We talked about work, hobbies, movies. Just as I was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, I could actually leave Claire and the past behind and start something new, my phone started vibrating violently in my pocket. I pulled it out. The name Claire flashed on the screen. My first instinct was to hit ignore, but my thumb hovered over the red button for a split second before, as if it had a mind of its own, swiping to green. What? I answered, my voice sharp with annoyance. It wasn't her voice on the other end. It was a blast of loud music and the slimy laughter of men. Then I heard her voice panicked and choked with tears. Ethan, help me. I'm at the Onyx Lounge. Mr. Russo, a man's rough voice cut in. Who the hell you calling, bitch? Get over here and have a drink with the boys. The line went dead. My mind went completely blank. The image of Russo's greasy smile from the other night merged with the terror in her voice, and something inside me exploded. I'm so sorry. Something's come up. I have to go. Right now. I threw an apology at my bewildered date, grabbed my jacket, and sprinted out of the coffee shop without a backward glance. I couldn't think. There was only one thought in my head. Get to her. Now. I drove like a maniac, running red lights, ignoring the blare of horns around me. The Uber driver kept asking if I was okay, but I didn't answer, my eyes fixed on the blur of streetlights outside. The only thing in my mind was the address, the Onyx Lounge. When we got there, I threw a $100 bill at the driver and ran inside before he could make change. The lobby was all chrome and black marble, the bass from the music vibrating through the floor. I grabbed the first employee I saw, a kid in a waistcoat, and demanded to know which private room Russo had booked. He stammered, saying it was the VIP section and he couldn't let me in. I didn't have time for that. I shoved past him and ran for the VIP corridor. Two huge bouncers in black suits immediately moved to block my path. Sir, you can't go in there. Get out of my way. I threw all my weight against one of them. Caught off guard, he stumbled back. The other one grabbed my arm, but I was running on pure adrenaline. I twisted free and kicked open the door he'd been guarding. Crash! The heavy door slammed against the wall, and the sleazy music and laughter inside stopped instantly. A dozen pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. The room was dark and hazy with smoke. My eyes scanned the room and found her immediately. Claire, cowering in the corner of a leather sofa. Her jacket was gone. One strap of her dress was pulled off her shoulder. Her hair was a mess, and her face was streaked with tears of humiliation. Mr. Russo had her by the arm with one hand and was trying to force a glass of whiskey to her lips with the other. A few other men were laughing, cheering him on. Come on, Claire, drink up. The project is all yours once you finish this glass. In that single second, every last thread of my sanity snapped. Russo saw me, and his face shifted from confusion to rage. Who the fuck are you? You think you could just bust into my party? I didn't say a word. I walked to the low table in the center of the room, picked up an unopened bottle of scotch, and brought it down with all my strength on the glass tabletop. The explosion of shattering glass and splashing liquor silenced the entire room. Everyone froze, staring at me in shock. I dropped the jagged neck of the bottle and walked toward Claire. I took off my jacket and wrapped it around her trembling shoulders, pulling it tight to cover her. We're leaving. My voice was low, hoarse, but it carried an authority that no one dared to question. Claire looked up, and when she saw it was me, the tears started flowing harder. She grabbed the fabric of my shirt and held on like it was a lifeline. You think you're going anywhere? Russo snarled, recovering himself and lunging for Claire. I turned and punched him. A clean, hard shot, straight to his smug face. He howled in pain, stumbling backward with his hands over his nose as blood started to gush between his fingers. You hit me. Do you know who I am? He sputtered. I didn't even bother to look at him again. I took Claire's shaking hand and, under the stunned gazes of everyone in the room, walked out of that disgusting place without looking back. I held her hand the entire time. It was ice cold and trembling, but in my grip, it slowly began still. The ride home was heavy with a terrible silence. I drove, my jaw tight, while Claire sat in the passenger seat, her quiet sobs slowly turning into gut-wrenching, unrestrained wails. The sound was filled with terror, humiliation, and a despair so deep it felt like a hammer blow to my own heart. I didn't ask any questions. I just rolled up the windows, shutting out the noise of the city, and passed her the entire box of tissues from the glove compartment. When we got back to that $950 a month apartment, I realized that somehow, without my noticing, it had started to feel like a home. Claire's crying eventually subsided. She sat on the armchair, hugging her knees, her eyes swollen and red. She looked like a small, frightened animal. I brought her a glass of hot water and set it in front of her. She looked at my face at the anger and worry still etched there, and finally, she spoke. Ethan, I'm sorry. I lied to you. Her voice was raw. I'm not bankrupt. My stomach dropped. I tightened my grip on my own glass, but I let her continue. I had nowhere else to go. Piece by piece, the whole story came out. Back in her old city, She had rejected the advances of a powerful industry tycoon. In retaliation, he had systematically destroyed her career, spreading rumors and having her blacklisted. My boyfriend at the time, when things were good, he was my biggest cheerleader. He said he believed in me. She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. But the second I was in trouble, the moment I needed him most, he cleaned out my bank account and vanished. Tears streamed down her face again. I couldn't go home. I didn't want my parents to worry. I couldn't stay in that city, so I came back here. But it's a small world. The rumors followed me. No one would hire me. Mr. Russo was the only one who gave me a chance. He said he admired my talent, that he didn't care about the gossip. I thought he was my saving grace. I needed that job so badly. I never thought I was afraid to stay in a hotel, scared that people from my past would find me. The only place I could think of, the only place I knew I'd be safe was here. With you, I made up the $10 million debt because I was afraid you wouldn't let me stay otherwise. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a raw, painful vulnerability. The 100,000 on that card, that was everything I had left in the world. I'm so sorry, Elite. I lay awake all night, her story replaying in my mind. All this time, beneath that armor of pride and arrogance, she had been broken and bleeding. Her forceful invasion of my life wasn't an act of power. It was a desperate cry for help. And I, the person who thought he knew her, had known nothing at all. I'd seen the facade she wanted me to see, and I'd used the cruelest words I could find to stab her when she was at her most vulnerable. A wave of guilt and compassion so strong it felt like drowning washed over me. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the window, but the mood in the apartment was still somber. Claire's phone rang. She answered, and as she listened, the last bit of color drained from her face. She hung up and said, her voice flat, "I've been fired." We both knew it was coming. She didn't cry. She just accepted it. Then, she stood up and quietly began to pack her small suitcase. When she was done, she walked over to me, picked up the black card I'd thrown on the floor, and placed it on the table. "You should keep the money. The pin is still your birthday." I should go now." She turned and walked to the door, her back straight, but her silhouette in the morning light looked impossibly fragile. Just as her fingers touched the cold metal of the doorknob, I moved. I crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed her wrist. It was so thin and cool, it felt like it might snap. "Where are you going?" I asked, my own voice tight with an emotion I couldn't name. She didn't turn around. "I don't know. Somewhere." Her answer was a needle to my heart. I pulled her back, turning her to face me. Then, right in front of her, I reached past her and locked the door with a loud thud. I stood between her and her only exit, just like she had done to me on that first day. The roles were reversed. She stared at me, confused. I looked her straight in the eye and said, slowly and clearly, "I said I'd sell you a year. Time's not up. You're not going anywhere." My tone was commanding, completely unreasonable. But my eyes, I realized, held a tenderness and resolve that I hadn't felt in a very long time. Claire stood frozen, just looking at me. And then, the wall of ice around her finally shattered. A huge, fat tear rolled down her cheek, and then another. This time, they weren't tears of humiliation or despair. They were tears of relief. I awkwardly lifted my hand and gently wiped them away with my thumb. Then, I took the suitcase from her hand and carried it back to the armchair. The black tape on the floor between us had suddenly lost all of its meaning. After that, everything changed. Claire was subdued for a while, spending most of her days just sitting quietly on the armchair, lost in thought. I started trying to take care of her. For the first time in my life, I cooked a real meal, following a recipe on my phone, making a complete mess of the kitchen. It didn't look great, and it tasted mediocre, but Claire ate every last bite. While we were eating, I pushed the black card back across the table to her. "This is yours. Keep it. I can afford the rent here." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded and put the card away. As for Russo, I didn't wait for him to try and get revenge. I spent an entire night using every skill I had to break into his company's servers. I found evidence of embezzlement, fraudulent accounts, the works. I packaged it all up and anonymously emailed it to his wife and his company's internal audit department. A week later, I saw a headline in the financial news. Russo had resigned for personal reasons and was under investigation. Megan called a couple more times, asking me out. I shut her down completely. We shouldn't talk anymore. Why, Ethan? She asked, confused. I glanced over at Claire, who was in the kitchen washing strawberries, and raised my voice just enough for her to hear. Because my girlfriend wouldn't like it. The line went silent. In the kitchen, Claire's ears turned bright red. I started helping her fix up her resume, pushing her to start fresh. I even reached out to a few old college professors, calling in favors I hadn't used in years to help her find job leads. You're brilliant, Claire, I told her. Don't let those idiots make you forget that. She would watch me from across the table as I sorted through job postings for her, her eyes shining. Our life started to resemble that of a real couple. We'd go to the grocery store together and argue over which brand of pasta sauce to buy. We'd curl up on the couch to watch a movie, and my arm would find its way around her shoulders. We'd share the same drink, eat from the same bowl of popcorn. For the first time, that tiny, rundown apartment was filled with a warmth I'd never known. I no longer saw her as an invader. I started to cherish the feeling of coming home to find a light on and someone waiting for me. I realized what I'd been missing wasn't peace and quiet. It was a home, and she was my home. 3 months later, with my encouragement and her own relentless effort, Claire landed a job at a top tech firm. The position was better than her last one, the salary higher. She started wearing her sharp business suits again, putting on her elegant makeup. She was like a phoenix reborn, confident and radiant. The queen I had first met was back. But this time, the ice in her eyes had been replaced by a soft, gentle warmth. One night, I came home from work to the smell of an incredible dinner. Claire had prepared a feast and had even opened a bottle of good red wine. To celebrate, she said, raising her glass with a smile. My probationary period is officially over. She looked beautiful in the candlelight. After dinner, when the mood was warm and relaxed, she reached into her purse, pulled out the black card, and placed it on the table between us once more. I frowned. What's this? She looked at me, her eyes sparkling like they held all the stars in the sky. I'm renewing the contract, she said with a soft smile. This time it's not for a year. It's for a lifetime. She paused, then added, the pin is the same. It's still your birthday. Her words hit me like a physical blow, straight to the heart. From her arrogant invasion, to her desperate plea, to this honest, open offering. That card had been a witness to all our fights, our misunderstandings, and our reconciliation. I looked into her shining eyes and saw no schemes, no pretense. Just love, pure and unwavering. I didn't reach for the card. I stood up, walked around the table, and pulled her out of her chair and into my arms. She smelled faintly of something sweet and familiar. My favorite scent. I lowered my head and kissed her. It wasn't a kiss of passion, but of rediscovery, of a love so profound it left no room for words. Keep the card. I'm keeping the girl. We were officially back together. Our relationship was stronger than it had ever been before the divorce, because now we both knew how to love and how to trust. Claire's career soared. She was like a diamond that had been covered in dust. Once polished, she shone brighter than ever. Her parents found out about everything that had happened and called me, their voices thick with gratitude. They offered to buy us a sprawling penthouse downtown as a new home. I didn't say yes. I told them it was Claire's decision. That night, she curled up against me in bed and asked, Ethan, do you want to move? Get out of this tiny, beat-up place. I held her and asked, do you? She smiled and snuggled closer. I kind of like it here. It's small, but it's warm. I pulled her even tighter. She was right. This place had seen our ugliest fights and our deepest wounds, but it had also seen our most honest moments and our rebirth. This was where our love started over. That weekend, instead of looking at condos, we went to a home goods store. Together, we redecorated our little studio. I was the one who tore the ugly black tape off the floor and threw it in the trash. We picked out new curtains and a soft rug. We planted gardenias, her favorite, in a pot on the balcony. I watched her in the kitchen, humming as she cooked for me, the afternoon sun streaming through the window and casting a golden halo around her. I knew then that my millionaire ex-wife had finally, truly, come home. And this time it was for good.